The last few months I've been challenging myself to shoot with only adapted lenses on my Fujifilm. The only rule being they can't be normal lenses. And boy, have I tried some really odd ones. Sometimes it was just a challenge to get the lens to work on my camera. And sometimes the lenses really surprise me with how good they are. Like this lens. These lenses were originally designed for tiny 110 film cameras, and they range from this nickel sized 24mm f2.8 to this much larger 70mm f2.8. And actually they're pretty easy to adapt, unlike some other lenses I'll be trying next. You can buy a pretty nice cheap adapter from most mirrorless systems. The one big catch is that while they are manual focus, which is nice, they are a constant f2.8 aperture, and that's because the changing aperture happened in the camera system of the Pentax Auto 110 system. So there's actually no changing aperture in the lenses themselves. You can create your own aperture discs to slide behind if you please, but I just embraced being stuck wide open at f2.8 all the time. And you think the lens quality of these would be a joke. I mean, I kind of look like an idiot walking around with this, but they're actually really good. The 18mm is one of my favorites because it's a wide field of view, compact size, and a mix of vintage charm with surprising sharpness. It does vignette on APS-C size sensors, but I'm in a forgivable mood, so once again, I'll embrace it. The 24mm is super tiny, not as sharp wide open, but still plenty of fun. And my 70mm is incredibly sharp if you can get things in focus. These lenses were easy to adapt, but these next lenses were not. I've long been interested in these cheap plastic point-and-shoot film cameras that have really nice primed lenses actually. So for my next odd adapted lens, I wanted to take the lens off of one of these cameras that was broken anyway and see if I could adapt it to digital. I scurried across the internet looking for cheap broken cameras and checking for image samples on this great resource from Lomography. This Minolta HIMATIC actually has some really nice image samples, and it was really cheap, so I snagged it. Turns out it was easy enough to disassemble, just have to check under the fake leather grip for screws, as they are often hidden there. The actual lens can be disassembled from the front using a spanner wrench, much like a standard interchangeable lens would. But I also wanted to access the mechanism that moves the lens back and forth to focus. That's called a helicoid. You can purchase or 3D print helicoids separately, but because there's already one here, I might as well use it. Getting all of that out, we're left with this beautiful tiny lens that focuses in and out smoothly with this brass helicoid. Now all that's left to do is 3D print a body cap for my Fujifilm with a hole in it, fix this lens in there, add a little extension tube to get the flange distance correct, and voila, here we have it. The image quality is really pleasant. It's soft, but not overly soft. And it has that nice vintage feel to it. Shooting on my Fujifilm gave some really nice colors as well. One of my images even got onto Flickr Explore page, which I thought was funny. If only they knew what a little hacked lens that image was shot on. But what if instead of one of these lenses off a film camera, you took 3 of them and put them on? Then you get this next lens. This is the triple lens from Dispo Studio, who sent me this monstrosity to try out and show you all. He does disposable camera lenses modded onto digital cameras, except these are fixed focus lenses, unlike my Minolta setup. And if you can think about how this works, the sensor is going to get 3 images overlapping each other, sort of like a Venn diagram, at slightly different angles. The result is sort of a multi-exposure mixed with intentional camera movement effect for some really neat abstract shots. He also has these more normal single disposable lens setups if you want to play with a focus-free lens that is essentially a body cap. Because everything is in focus, it doesn't have a very close focusing distance, but one thing I found fun playing with was putting an extension tube on the lens for a point-and-shoot macro of sorts. But my next set of lenses are anything but a toy. Increasing in strangeness, these next lenses required even more work to adapt to my camera. These are the Nikonos lenses. I just realized that's my first time saying that out loud. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. They're made by Nikon or Nikon for their professional underwater film cameras made for decades. A viewer of this channel actually tipped me off to these lenses because there wasn't a readily available adapter made for them. And anytime I hear that, I think, let's see if we can try to make one with my elementary modeling skills. The most complicated bit beyond getting all the pieces right for the mount, when you're a novice 3D modeler like me using free software designed for children, is getting the flange distance right. Flange distance is the distance from the back of the lens to where the film or the digital sensor would be. That distance is different for every camera system. This 35mm f2.5 lens is a beauty, and you'll notice the obvious strange knobs coming off the side of it. These are to change the aperture and to focus while underwater, which is pretty neat. This lens gives off a beautiful vintage swirly bokeh in the background, and then gets super sharp when you stop it down. This is a 20mm f2.8 lens made for this system, and it was a bit more effort to adapt because while the 35mm was designed for above and below water use, most of these other lenses were designed for underwater only, including this 20mm. So because the lens was designed only to be used underwater, to get it to focus to infinity above water, I actually had to use a different adapter with a different flange distance just to get it to focus to infinity. And even with that, the next thing I noticed was that while the center was in focus, all the edges are not, in almost like a tilt effect, but a circular one. And this is, I'm assuming, because the lens was designed for underwater use and using the light refracting through the water to get a clear image. I ended up liking adapting these lenses so much that I bought another amphibious lens. Yeah, that's what they're called. The ones designed for above ground and underwater use, the 80mm f4 lens. And this is a great lens if you want a similar look to the 35mm, but you want a longer focal length and you want to keep these nice twisty knobs on the side to show off to your friends. If you want to learn how I design and adapt virtually any lens to any camera, then check out this video I made that'll get you started with the basics. I'll see you over there, and until next time, happy snapping.